love, you're listening to the Died on Ashanta podcast. I'm a resilience strategist and migrant integration specialist who has spent the last 20 years traveling, working, and studying throughout the Caribbean, North America, Europe, Africa, and Asia. As a globetrotter, I quickly learned how to bounce back from crisis and how to thrive in new and strange places. I've used my training and experience to develop a resilience-based framework, and now I help others to get over the hurdles that come with living in a foreign country. Now on this podcast, I invite you to join me on this journey of living with simplicity, joy, and resiliency. From green smoothies to goal setting, we'll cover it all. We'll talk about all the things that help us to thrive through the storm. Welcome to the Died on Ashanta podcast. This is episode 18, and today we're talking about Old Scabs. And of course, we're focusing on mental resilience today, and we're talking about how old wounds that don't get acknowledged, they don't go through any processes for recovery, you don't develop any skill sets to kind of protect yourself from repeat encounters or experiences, how that can impact how you show up in life today, and whether you keep failing or you thrive. And so without getting into any details, I want to go straight to this week's proverb, and it's from the Yoruba culture. So this Yoruba proverb says, "Don't look where you fell, but where you slipped." Don't look where you fell, but where you slipped. And this is so important because as we think about personal resilience and our ability to thrive through adverse situations, crises, disappointments, etc., we often are just looking at what's happening now and trying to fix what's happening now without recognizing that maybe some of the thought patterns we're having, some of the behaviors that we maintain, some of the things that trigger us, even some of the people we keep around us are all tied to where we fell. And you might be wondering, what do you mean by where we fell? Well, if you think about it, as a child running about and playing, you fall down, you maybe skin your knee or you bruise your elbow, you're fallen and you get a wound. Usually you get the wound cleaned and treated, and after, a few days or maybe a week or two, you're good to go. There's a scab covering it and slowly it heals. Pretty much a month later, there's no sign that you were injured in that particular spot. Recently, I was interacting with one of my children, and as I lifted them, I realized there was blood on my hand or something. And when I checked the child's arm, I realized that an old scab had come off. Now, this happens in our psychological or emotional lives as well, where sometimes we get an injury and our body starts the kind of healing process, the part of protecting it from infection, which is what a scab does. It is kind of this crust that happens over the skin to prevent any kind of external element, any dust, etc., from getting into the wound while the body heals. When you have a scab on an injured area, it's not healed, it's still tender. If someone even gently rubs a bit of paper or cloth against that area, you feel it, it's tender. And this happens in our lives, and sometimes we don't realize how far back into our life experience certain negative encounters, negative experiences have shaped who we are today and our ability to deal with stress and problem now. Now, one of the very first persons to bring this to my attention is a pediatrician. She's of Jamaican parentage, and her name is Dr. Nadine Burke Harris, and she actually did an amazing TED Talk. I hope you look it up. And she talks about adverse childhood experiences. And These could be any kind of repeated exposure to things like abuse, neglect, household dysfunction. So whether you're talking about physical abuse or emotional abuse, maybe if a parent or a family member had struggled with mental illness or substance abuse, maybe there's a relative that was incarcerated, or maybe the child observed their mother being battered, whether physically, emotionally, verbally, whatever. Or it could be that they have observed or experienced a traumatic event like a fire or a flood or an explosion or maybe a major vehicle accident. Or maybe they are regularly observing or being surrounded by maybe the community or the neighborhood they grew up in has a lot of crime, a high crime rate. And for many people, they take these things for granted. They see their neighbors fighting every day. Maybe they are exposed to gun violence. Maybe they have parents who have split up, or both parents have abandoned them, and maybe some other relative is taking care of them. And you kind of just absorb that and say, this is life. We have to tough it out. But if those experiences are not acknowledged as being potential, as being negative experiences that can shape how you think, shape how you behave, shape how you view the world, which they really do, then you won't seek any kind of intervention to help you process those experiences, to get healing. You won't seek to acquire the skills to ensure that you protect yourself from other adverse experiences, and how to deal with I guess the triggers, the memories, the tender spots that come up again. And so when you notice that maybe you're experiencing a lot of anxiety, you just feel dissatisfied with life, it doesn't matter what's going great in your life, you're not content about life. Maybe you're dealing with bouts of depression or even respiratory illnesses. You might think it's just a physical thing, but if you were to sit and spend the time, you could probably trace it back to your childhood and experiences that you've had. Maybe you're having a hard time handling, you're managing your weight and you're dealing with obesity or just physical inactivity. And we take a lot of these things as for granted, but it has been proven through research and decades, if not more longer, of tracking people and their lifestyles and how children turn out based on these adverse childhood experiences, that these things tie back to our childhood. And so the reality is that scabs can cover a wound, but it doesn't heal the injury. And so I would want to encourage all of us to take the time to determine whether we have some old wounds that are slowing us down on this journey of life, whether it is there are things that we experienced or we observed or we had to live in an environment with, things that didn't make us feel safe, didn't give us a sense of stability, things that didn't nurture us to grow in joy and peace and enthusiasm and energy, that those things are sitting within us as old wounds. Maybe there's a scab covering it, so it's not so obvious, but they're sitting as old, unhealed parts of us that we need to get some support with, that we need to get new skills to deal with, so we can recover, so that we will be mentally resilient, strong in mind, strong in spirit, so that we can face the challenges that we deal with each day, so that we don't feel like giving up hope whenever we deal with difficulties from our day-to-day life. And so I would want to encourage you, if you want to explore this more, of course, check out Dr. Burke Harris's TED Talk, the book I'd recommend that really goes over how the brain, body, and mind are impacted through traumatic experiences. Please check out The Body Keeps Score, and it's written by Dr. Bessel van der Kolk. And have a look at this book. It not only goes over what happens to us in our minds, our bodies, when we have traumatic experiences, but how we can practice different strategies, techniques, skills that help us to recover, even if these are really old wounds. They help us recover, become strong, resilient, and to enjoy life, because that's what we are here to do, to enjoy life. So that's it for this week. I hope you will spend the time to discover your old wounds that are probably impacting how you show up today, and that you will seek out the resources, get the supports to deal with them so you can heal, recover, and be vibrant and amazing like you ought to be. That's it for this week. Have a great week. Thanks so much for listening, love. If you enjoyed this episode, head over to didanashanta.com. I'd love to hear your thoughts on today's message. Be sure to drop your email address so I can send you some helpful resources, updates, and the occasional music video that I may have on repeat. Make sure you subscribe and spread the love with someone you care about.